Our presenter today, Ben Brobst-Renaud, was a presenter with painter and art professor Sarah Jancy last year. You may recall he curated an exhibit in this gallery of work he and his students generated using AI, artificial intelligence. And basically what his class did did sort of visual riffs on Junius Sloan paintings that were on display. Ben participated earlier this spring in the Brauer colloquium. He was the first to accept my invitation for that and the first to volunteer to present. This time, he'll be using real intelligence, his own, not artificial, to help us recognize the playful intelligence in these two images. Ben is a visiting professor of art in our Department of Communications and Visual Art. I hope his visit is extended forever. I hope he stops visiting and gets planted here. I hope he's here till the cows come home, and then some. Speaking of cows, Ben was born in Iowa, earning his bachelor's degree at Judson College, his MA and his MFA in art at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He and his wife, Mandy Brobst-Renaud, have lived all over, where besides making art, Ben started a wine distribution business. He's worked as a cook, a barista, a bartender, and on the department webpage, he says he was once something called a head maverick. Did the other mavericks resent to the hierarchy? I would like to know. It does not say that Ben and Mandy are excellent gardeners. I know this because we're neighbors in the community plot by Old Campus, but no more. Here's Ben.
First off, John has a nice thing of notes. Some people memorize their talks, some people have note cards. I have this. Good luck to all of you. Okay, so we're going to ignore the Jose Aragon piece because John talked about it last week. But I chose these two pieces. First thing I'm curious about is what, a thing my classes are probably really tired of hearing me say, which is, what do you see in either one of these? Yeah. This one? Yeah. Okay. What else?
Oh, Ben, repeat the question.
Oh, okay. I'm looking at.
Repeat the responses that you get to the question.
Repeat the responses. Okay. So the Frank Stella piece, the comment was that it looks kind of like an art student's notebook. What else?
Are we just talking about the one on the left?
Nope, either one.
I see words and color.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, the other question is, how do you respond to these? Because I've heard positive and negative both directions, so I'm curious about what your sort of gut reaction is. What do you notice first? What do you feel first? Yeah?
I read a book about disability injustice, and that's why the words.
Yeah, disability and justice, yeah. Yeah. What else?
The other one, I see it differently. Thanks, Edie, for the disability justice. I see an insult to the patriarchy.
This one?
Yeah.
An insult to the patriarchy. No one else is going to see anything else for the rest of the day. Sarah.
I see two artists that are really different.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so different. Maybe they wouldn't even get along.
Yeah, two artists that are really, really different. There's another hand. Yeah.
Two things. One is those colors are in that painting.
Mm-hmm.
An engineer, and it looks like that one isn't done yet.
Oh. What would make it done?
Little thing at the bottom.
Okay.
That one looks like the floor of the art studio during finals week.
Floor of the art studio during finals week. Yeah. You again.
The one on the left is Stella, right?
Yeah.
I noticed that the green draws me in on the Stella one, especially
Okay. Yeah, I should have introduced these first. This is Frank Stella's print Moby Dick, and this is Kay Rosen's Pruned. So, I mean, really, really briefly, I'm out of order, but you saw my notes. The Frank Stella piece, he did over 200 works based on Moby Dick. So paintings, sculptures, reluctantly prints, and then Kay Rosen is actually a Northwest Indiana artist who works primarily in text. She trained, I believe, as a linguist, but is known for text-based pieces, sometimes small, sometimes taking up whole walls of galleries, sometimes painted directly onto the ceiling and the floor. But I feel like this piece, more than any other in the museum, is the one that I've had people say, God, I can't stand that piece, which makes me want to talk about it more. But at least as far as the published Brauer catalog goes, at least the writer of that text was talking about this in terms of kind of a typography joke, right? If you prune a B, you can get a P. But then if we're talking about limbs, we have this interplay between trees and people, and trees don't limp, so this has to be about people, but then, and so it quickly does get into that area of like, is this about access to, to facilities, to services? Is it about something that's more than just these 8 letters on text? The other thing I always like to note about these is this is hand painted, and that's a print, even though that feels like a painting and this feels like a poster. One of the other things that I'm really curious about is if you could imagine the sizes reversed. This is really big, that's really small. How does your experience change?
It looks like the M's could run away.
The M's could run away, yeah. How would your experience be different if this was much smaller? The main thing for me is I would see it as a collage. But when it's this big, I don't see it as a print, I see it as a painting. And that's not really fair because I worked in a print shop that made really big prints, but I still think it's a painting. John? It is a collage, right. But it's like the way it, I don't know, sort of spiritually lands for me, it's like this is a painting. This is like a big go to a museum, see it kind of thing, right? Not something I have in a frame in my home, just because of the scale. Yeah.
I wonder if others see that what looks like a Xerox machine.
Over here? The Xerox machine? I think it is, but I've not been able to come across any written confirmation of that.
So it seems to be kind of an interesting play on the idea of print, that you have a printer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a fun play on that printing thing. And I was reading this morning that Stella really initially was not that interested when Tyler Graphics approached him about making prints. Even though they made a really good case, it was more like, okay, fine, I'll do this. And then at one point, apparently he had this experience of, he'd been having them cut out metal plates to use for printing, and the metal workers they'd hired to do that had them all spread out on a piece of board, and the board, they were using the same board, and it was getting kind of scarred and cut up and slightly burned here and there, and he came across this surface, and he said this was like this moment of like, wait, this is what I can do with prints. I don't just have to replicate my paintings. Like we have the Brauer has another Frank Stella, which is much different than this, that has a lot more to do with his early minimalist works. And then by the time he hits this, it feels more maximalist than minimalist.
This one,
Yeah.
I just want to go and get a pair of scissors and cut that piece over.
Just cut that off. Yeah. we can just get rid of that. That's great. Like that kind of that connection between the two. Like this is why I'm always interested to make people talk to me about what they see, because there's always something I don't see. It is interesting that with, yeah, although, but then it looks like it's clearly folded up, so it initially would have extended to the floor. Yeah, so where's the rest of this? I mean, yeah. I was looking up other, this is, I think, an edition of, edition of 60. I was looking up some of the other places that have parts of this edition, like I think Princeton has one. It looks basically the same. The part that's noticeably different is this marbling. They're roughly the same shapes, but the marbling is different, and some of the hand coloring too. I should say that this is a print, but it's a screen print, lithograph, linocut, hand coloring, marbling, and a collage. So it's a painting. Said the painter. What else? I have no idea what time it is, but I've been fascinated with this Moby Dick series for 15 years. And it was the sculptural paintings that kind of drew me in initially. But I love this idea of, he made at least one work for every chapter. And the titles are the chapter titles. This one, there is one chapter in Moby Dick called Moby Dick, and that's what this one is based on. So it wasn't just like a throwaway title, that actually is a chapter title. Is there anything in this you would connect to Moby Dick if it wasn't for that title? No? Yeah. John?
There is a whale's eye.
Here? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But power of suggestion, right?
No, I mean, I think if you look closely, it looks like a...
Oh, no, I can see it, but without the title, would you have seen it?
Right.
Yeah. But I think that's what's so compelling to me about this group of work. And we'll get back to Kay Rosen, that's so sad to leave her alone. I liked the idea of artwork that deals with something literary or like big ideas without illustrating it, right? Like this wouldn't make a whole lot of sense as an illustration in, like an artist's book of Moby Dick. Maybe you could use it as the cover with some text on top, maybe, but it's too chaotic, it's not specific enough, it doesn't relate directly enough. And so I had this moment, not looking at this, but working on my own tiny basement studio using text in paintings, where I realized that what I was doing was not trying to say something, not trying to convey a message specifically, I was trying to learn. And that the making process was, it was a kind of research, I guess. The difficulty is that quantifying that is difficult. And I think and I'm not sure that's what Stella was doing, but one way around having to quantify it, I think, is by making such a big body of work that people don't have time to then ask you those questions, because you can just say, oh, the work speaks for itself. There's 260 of them. So with that kind of way of thinking in mind, how might that sort of idea of exploration pertain to a text-based work? Because other people have played with this too. Cindy Sherman, oh good grief, it's Trenton Doyle Hancock. I mean, you see it in pieces in this room even, where there's text involved. How might the idea of exploration play with a piece that literally comes out and gives you words? Yeah, that piece has it too. I mean, I guess we could go back even further. Do words necessarily indicate meaning? I feel like that's a cultural assumption that we make, but do words necessarily carry meaning, or can they just be a visual as well?
Well, clearly they can be.
Mm-hmm.
If I look at a painting that's been done in Sanskrit,
Yep,
those words carry no meaning for me because I don't read Sanskrit.
yep.
But they carry a lot of beauty because the shapes of them, just the shapes,
Mm-hmm.
to me, constitute art.
So they have different layers of significance.
Well, they would, depending on,
Mm-hmm.
if I look at something painted in English,
So when you see words, you feel entitled to the meaning.
Yeah, because I can kind of read Hebrew, like I'm trying to figure out the Hebrew, right?
On this piece, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I'm like, is it a gong? Is it a whatever? I know you're not talking about that piece, but
But we certainly can.
but I think when there's words, I feel a different sense of entitlement than, for example, the Moby Dick piece, which is, I don't let words disorient me the way that the Moby Dick piece would be allowed to disorient me.
Do you mind that it disorients you?
No, it's kind of fun. I like the floaty feeling of like, I don't know what I'm looking at, but it's kind of fun. I
There's,
don't feel like I'm gonna get it wrong with the Moby Dick piece.
oh, okay, yeah.
I feel like I could get it wrong.
Oh, anybody else have a similar feeling to that? Like there's a right answer over here and no wrong answers here? So full disclosure, I have never successfully made it all the way through Moby Dick. I have lots of false starts, but I get partway through and I get distracted by the other stack of books. But the way you're talking about this, I actually wrote down a Melville quote about this. Apparently right after he got this published, he wrote to a friend that I have written a wicked book and I feel spotless as a lamb. And I've always kind of loved that because it embodies this kind of chaotic. He wrote to a friend that I have written a wicked book and I feel spotless as a lamb.
Spotless as a lamb.
Which is a phrase that has all sorts of religious overtones, but overtones. But like that feeling of like turmoil and chaos and uncertainty and even violence that comes through in this body of work. And this specifically, I mean, it kind of like, for me, like it resonates very deeply in connection with the 2/3 of Moby Dick that I've managed to read on 3 different occasions. Yeah,
So he did a painting for each chapter of.
Frank Stella, yeah.
Have you seen them? Are they all kind of similar?
They all look like siblings to me. Like you could look, like if you saw the rest of them, they have similar forms. They have the kind of things that look like waveforms. Like this kind of like swooping piece comes through. You don't always get images like what John referred to as like the copier or the printer, but there's a lot of marbling. There's a lot of these like sort of what I think of as like fin pieces that cut through. There's lots of what feel like layers, and in some cases that's sheets of steel in a sculpture that protrudes from the wall about this far or even further. The colors are kind of consistent as well. It's a mixture of lots of like sort of almost like silvery steel surfaces, which for me in this is mirrored by the way this spray paint is used. And then these very bright saturated colors as well. So they like regardless of chapter, the sculptures, the paintings, the prints all visually appear related.
So they're all about the same size?
I think the prints are mostly this size. The sculptures and paintings are bigger. And a lot of them, I think some of them are freestanding sculptures, and some of the paintings are only protrude a little bit from the wall, but some of them are attached to the wall and protrude, I think, up to like 7 or 8 feet. And they occupy a space where it's like, technically that's a relief sculpture, but a really, really high relief sculpture. Like,
I wonder if he read Moby Dick.
he did. He was, so Stella was visiting an aquarium with his children, and the whale they saw made him think of Moby Dick, which he was reading at the time, which then became the body of work. Yeah. I'm not sure if it was, I am reading this chapter, so I'm working on this chapter. I'm not sure if it worked that way, but he was, I mean, it was also a decade-long process, longer than a decade. So I assume he read faster than that, but I don't actually know.
How long has it taken you?
To make 260 paintings?
No, to read Moby Dick.
Oh, I haven't managed to yet.
So maybe that's how long it took you.
You might be right. I like that. Yeah.
Have all of the 260 pieces been displayed together?
I don't think so.
Why would an artist do that?
Why not?
Because we can't have everything in one showing, one gallery.
Mhm.
It just seems like there must be something, seeing them all, that would have another.
I mean, I think it would be amazing. I think that would be like the best scenario. I'm not sure what kind of warehouse you could rent to do that. but I've always like experienced it as the ideas were too big to just do one show, and they had to keep going. Like there was just more output that was necessary, which I'm sort of jealous of because I'm continually getting distracted by, you know, I should probably feed the dog, and you know, let's I don't know, go wandering off.
Did Stella have any anxiety issues or any sort of mental illness that we should know about?
Not that I've read about. I actually.
It looks like notebooks of papers have been ripped out. Maybe this is his angst of trying to go through Moby Dick like you did.
I mean, maybe, yeah.
This is the visual representation of the angst that he was going through.
It could be. I mean, I haven't read about that, but it's certainly possible. John.
One thing that might have inspired him in Melville is that people who write about Moby Dick say there's no book quite like it. I mean, it's really multi-form. There's some sections that, there's a whole chapter on the colored white.
Yeah.
And I hadn't thought of that when I see how much white there is remains in the image. But there are so many disparate parts.
Mm-hmm.
And one way that American novels differ from French or English novels is how rambunctious they can be.
Yeah.
Rather than really strictly formal this or formal that.
Mm-hmm.
So Stella may, as a 21st century artist, may have said, I'm not going to do what he did, but I'm going to do in my medium something like what he did.
Yeah.
Everything.
And sort of connecting to that, Stella's talked about this body of work specifically being a conversation about his love for the abstract expressionists, like a feeling of this is the generation that came before me, and then there's bits and pieces that correspond here. But the abstract expressionists are known for that sort of wildness that you're describing, as rambunctiousness you're describing as well. I want to circle back to scale. Yeah.
I was going to go back to that question too that you mentioned. I think that the limb would have so much more interest. I think it's fascinating and I love it. I thought it was a protest against war. I always thought
Mhm.
that. But if it's as big as some of the things are on the side of her buildings where she has lettering,
Yeah.
you know, exterior buildings, or even as big as that,
Mhm.
I think people would think, oh, I don't really like that. They're going to stop. They're going to stop because of the size.
Yeah.
And you look at it more. The same as I think if that were really small like that, there would be too much in there, it would be too hard to look at, and I think you walk right by it.
Yep. So,
Size really does matter.
yeah. And so for me, I can understand this size choice, but I don't quite get this size choice. Anybody else, anybody feel like they're fine the way they are? Or, yeah? Like, this almost feels like it's always almost felt like a sketch to me. I mean, I like it too, but I always have that sense of like, especially seeing her other work that's so like kind of big and striking. Seeing this,
It looks like the exercises that you do in college where you use a plaka and a ruling pen and try to hand letter stuff back in the day before computer. You had to learn how to
yeah.
draw, and that's kind of like the same thing that we used to do
Mm-hmm.
in that scale.
Yeah.
Would you think the limb painting is kind of constricting and restrictive?
I think so. For me, that's always like I've always felt like that had more to do with our expectation for the way words relate to margins.
Well, I'm a person with a limb,
Okay.
and that is somewhat
Constricting.
restricting, limiting.
Yeah. I'm wondering how, and I wish I'd thought to run this by my graphic design colleague before this, but I'm curious about how this might have felt different if you had the green going out to about the edge, like just like one margin significantly different than the other. How does that change the experience of looking at this piece? Ashley? Adds movement, yeah. Yeah. John?
I wonder what the color green. Green's usually filled us with both. Green is the color gold, you know, and it goes to a traffic light.
Yeah.
It'd be very different if it had red.
Yeah. And I mean, I
There's all kinds of different shades of green you could use.
mm-hmm.
We take hope in the fact, I mean, the title's
Yeah. Yeah, and the new growth is very green. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's interesting because seeing the words makes me think about when I drive by like advertisements for like grocery stores and they use upside down W's as N's.
Yeah.
And these look like upside down W's.
Yeah.
So like thinking about if I saw it outside, I think here they read as M's to me, but I think if I saw it outside, I would just wish the store had actually spent the extra money to get the proper letters.
Does anyone else willing to admit to having the same experience that I have, which is when I don't look at this and I think about it, this is limp limb to me. And then I look at it and I remember I've got it backward. Because I expect the adjective to be in a different spot. But it might not, maybe it's actually a verb. I don't know. And I think all of this is what I love about Kay Rosen specifically, but especially this piece, because it doesn't fit the criteria that I think, even having learned about text-based art, I don't think it fits the criteria of what I expect when I go into a museum. And I go by it quickly, and instead I look at the horrible Leon Golub print. Not horrible as in it's a bad print, but horrible because Leon Golub makes scary paintings. I'm curious about, having talked a little bit about like meaning and how words can either enhance that or get in the way of that. If there are other pieces in this room that you think kind of play in that same space. For me, like immediately, the Carol Walker print does a similar thing to the Stella in that it's not a specific story, but it's layered. I mean, literally layered, but also like there's layers of narrative and meaning in it. There's literally text in the piece in the corner over here. Does it feel like any of those or any of the other ones in the room kind of move in a similar way, operate in a similar space?
I happen to know that the Carol Walker's title is No World.
Is No World?
No World. And I think we expect to hear New World rather than No World.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it, and it's, I think most people who read it, Carol Walker is an African-American artist,
Mm-hmm.
and she works with lots of stereotypically racist tropes.
Mm-hmm.
So you have some Pekingese so-called silhouettes up on the left, and you look like you have a slave ship being pulled up. So she's definitely playing with our expectations.
And you have the figure who has been tossed overboard, as so many women who died in childbirth were. Mm-hmm. But again, no actual words other than No World. Yeah. What about that one? I know almost nothing about this. Sarah, did you learn many things about this when you curated this show?
I chose that piece because it shows a different type of body and a different type of idea attached to it. I don't know very much about this basket, right?
Yeah.
I know that this was a piece that was part of a Holocaust series, and so it's quite a heavy piece.
Yeah.
There are those letters up there, or is that Hebrew? That's got to be Hebrew, and
I
I think there's a translation in the Brauer book.
In the book, okay.
Yeah.
You don't want to try your hand at translating it right now? Okay. I'm always nonplussed by the way I can't tell if this is supposed to be a living figure or a dead figure.
It's about that.
It's a.
So I don't know if it's yeah. The title, I think, of the piece speaks a lot.
The title is We Lie Here Dead, and His Godly Name Grows Greater and Holier.
Mm-hmm.
But at the bottom, the artist has written not, "We lie here dead," but "I am dead."
Oh, okay. Well, that answers that. I think, okay, we're going to figure out the text.
That's how it's listed as the title.
Yeah, I'm hoping there's translation in the book. Yeah,
Well, I was thinking, it's interesting because I have seen that, so I'm familiar with the Jewish tradition of the golem.
Mhm.
And so, a golem is really neither living nor dead.
yeah.
And so the form of the figure, because usually the golems were large figures, sometimes carrying precious goods inside of them, sometimes, it's a really interesting kind of medium and idea.
Well, and they typically had the name of God written on paper inside their head. And there's, I think maybe other words too, but there's words. We don't have it? Okay. We'll just imagine these meanings or speculate about these meanings, I guess. I mean, I like the idea of the golem. I mean, it also could shed light on the need for protection or the sort of disproportionate quality of the figure. A lot of stories about golems, some of them are badly made or quickly made. But I like that layer a lot. And there's lots of kind of like, yeah.
I think Baskin actually revolutionized woodcut printing. I think before Baskin, no one was doing it in that size and that scale.
Yeah.
And so Allison Stars is doing something similar
Mhm.
in copy two.
What are the dates on these? I haven't compared them.
This is 1998.
1998. What's the SAR? 2014. Okay. I always get the two SARs mixed up. One's daughter, one's mother. This is okay. Allison and Betty. Yeah, woodcut is finicky. I remember working on some like massive Judy Pfaff woodcuts, and that's just like boards that are that big are really unwieldy and can only be printed so many times before they start to shatter, and it's just a whole logistical mess. Printers they're not as interesting as potters, but they're pretty interesting folk. Okay, what else? My little maelstrom of information. The other thing I was thinking about with this Moby Dick piece is the way that, like, kind of trying to figure out how I felt about the idea of a work that was about something without being, without specifically showing its hand or illustrating. And the best comparison I could come to was instrumental music. Like the way that sometimes they're like, you can, have a composition that's everything about the seasons without ever having words, and it manages to embody something. You're smirking about back there. You can hear it in your head? Nice. And like in that sense, it makes way more sense to me. I've occasionally had people talk to me about like, well, abstract art drives me crazy because I can't figure it out. It's like, no, you don't need to figure it out. You can if you want, but like that's not like just like experience it. And I think that's where a piece like this really lands most impactfully for me. Sarah?
I keep thinking of the phrase wrestling match
Mm-hmm.
as a way of describing painting, and I think of that as a painting as well.
Yeah.
The brush strokes they're duking it out over dominance, and I'm also staring at this trying to think, is that green squiggle the thing that's out front? There's just, I love what John
Yeah.
And to me, it's that green squiggle on the top that feels like it's on top of everything. Or maybe the whale's eye is actually on top. I don't know.
Any other votes for on top?
It's the thing that's closest to me spatially, because if you think of it, like that green squiggle is out front, and then the orange thing is back there, and then the big gray thing is back there, but that's all in front of the copy machine, and the copy machine is, behind that white thing, which is behind the pink thing, and it's just like, if you start thinking about it, it's like, that's a really deep space in there.
Yeah, I think on the back there's a list of the layers and what materials are involved in each layer, and I think it's something like 34, 36 different layers making this up, and I don't think that includes the hand coloring, but it's again a funny contrast to a lot of other prints, because even though the Basquiat print is great, you have probably 2, maybe 3 blocks. It's just a different kind of process. And the intricacy of this, and we're being able to repeat it 60 times, is kind of incredible. Yeah.
When I look at the Kay Rosen, my habits are to read things from left to right and top to bottom.
Yeah.
So, and I've got the words, so I know how to do that. I think one of the problems I have is, or maybe it's not a problem, but I'm just curious how others read a painting like the Stella.
Mhm.
Is your eye led to a particular place and then it radiates out, or do you obviously Stella wants us to look somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that he's sort of guiding me the same way Rosen guides it.
Yeah, like we talk a lot about focal points and leading lines and where your attention goes. And
I'm not landing anywhere on that one. It's like a
Mhm.
or something like that, where it's just a big a field,
yeah,
and it's not landing anywhere.
yeah.
On that one.
I mean, for me, the difference is that with Pollock, I feel like I sink into the field, and for this, I feel like I'm kind of like stuck, it's not like a surface that you can sink into. It's or I can't figure out if I'm going to land on something, because it seems like there's a different kind of depth, I guess. Is there? Yeah.
Well, I think the green influenced me, because I went right to the green on this one.
Yeah.
But that I can't stop looking at the bottom of it, the marble of the blue.
Mm-hmm.
You see, and then the creatures are green and kind of hanging around under there.
Yeah.
It just keeps pulling me back a little.
And somehow pairing that with the choppy woodcut, like that, there's like a tension, like a vibrating thing that happens there.
I keep seeing a volleyball.
Is it these pieces?
Yeah, is that one of the ones?
Yeah.
I kind of treat it like a magic poster.
A magic eye poster?
Like those posters that are like stare long enough, like an image, and depth appears like a movie. If I look at it like a magic eye and try to take in the whole field,
Mm-hmm.
that'll draw me in somehow, and I'll be able to look around. But instead, it's like I just have to keep it keeps my field of vision really wide and imprecise.
So I mean, like that experience of viewing sounds kind of like a wrestling match too.
The copy machine kind of makes me think of, it's like a boat. It's on the edge. If you turn it, flip it left,
Yeah.
it's like a boat, maybe a section through it, like an architectural section through it.
Okay.
Maybe that represents the boat. The spoiler alert, in case you haven't read Moby Dick.
Wait, there's a boat in Moby Dick? Okay. I didn't get that far. I do love that these sort of like volleyballish forms. For me, I can't look at those and not go back to one of Stella's first series, which were just based on protractors, and so you had these arcs repeated over and over again. And these are much sloppier, but hasn't quite worked that out of his system. And I think most of us who try to make art have forms that we kind of loop back to, like we can't quite I can't get away from this like speech bubble form. I don't know why. And it seems like this is one of them for Stella, is these arcs that are following each other along. I don't know where we are for time. Does anyone else? We all do.
4:46.
Well, that's not so bad. I don't know. Any other random things y'all would like to talk about with these? Yeah.
So Mary Schmeek was a columnist for the Chicago Tribune for many years. She's still writing. But one year she wrote a column about Moby Dick. Moby Dick said she had, like you, tried to read it many times, never succeeded. She challenged her readers. She said, I'm going to read it in a year, and I'm going to break it down and read it so much every month.
Yeah.
And she had hundreds of people who read along with her. This was about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And they, hundreds, literally hundreds of people writing on her Facebook page and everything to read the entire Moby Dick.
That's
She would love to
fantastic.
see this.
Yeah. There's a Chad Harbach novel called The Art of Fielding that like had a plot that kind of mirrored the plotline of Moby Dick. That was really lovely. I can manage to read that, but I can't manage to read the original. I don't know. Yeah.
Along what you were saying on the 150th anniversary of Moby Dick,
Mhm.
I forget which institute or museum, every day another chapter was read by a famous person.
Okay.
Like Tom Hanks or,
Yeah.
And there was art, a piece of art. So I don't remember when that was exactly, but now I want to go back and see if, what's the date of it? Well, you said 10 years it took.
Yeah. I mean,
wonder if any of his pieces were used.
it
Some of the
seems like it
chapters
would
are
have.
one paragraph and some are many pages, but every day
Mhm.
was, you could listen to.
I think I've seen a recording of this, like 25 hours of Moby Dick or something like that.
And it also had a piece of art with each chapter.
Okay.
It was good.
Well, thank you for coming.